The salt-laced wind was my only constant companion out here on ST. Jude's rock. They called me the Keeper, Thomas. Keeper of the Light. For 20 years, I'd tended the great lamp, a sentinel against the tempestuous moods of the sea. The solitude, the rhythmic crash of waves against the granite base, the mournful cry of gulls, it had all become part of me. It was a simple, lonely life, and I liked it that way. Or so I thought. It began with the logbooks, tucked away in a damp, forgotten sea chest in the storeroom were the records of my predecessors, leather-bound volumes filled with spidery, faded ink. I'd read them all, of course. Mundane entries about weather patterns, supply shipments, and the occasional shipwreck. But one evening, fueled by a dram of whiskey and a bout of intense loneliness, I found one I'd never seen before. It was smaller, bound in what looked like dark, weathered sealskin, and had no dates on the cover. The first entry was from a man named Alistair Finch, dated 1887. His handwriting was elegant, but it grew frantic, almost illegible, as the pages went on. He didn't write about the weather or the lamp. He wrote about the sound. Aloham, he called it. Something that started deep within the Lighthouse's foundation, a vibration that seemed to resonate not in the ears, but in the bones. At first, he dismissed it as the sea or the wind. But the hum grew. He described it as a song, a discordant, unsettling melody that wormed its way into his dreams. He wrote about seeing things, shadows that weren't his own, flitting at the edge of his vision in the winding stairwell. A face, pale and gaunt, reflected in the lantern's glass for a split second before vanishing. He started sleeping in the lantern room, terrified of the floors below. His last entry was a single, chilling sentence. The light is not for the ships. It is to keep them away, then nothing. The pages after were blank. The next keeper, a man named Silas Blackwood, took over in 1888. His entries were brief, paranoid. He mentioned the hum, but he called it the whisper. He claimed the lighthouse was speaking to him, telling him secrets of the deep, of things that slumbered beneath the waves. He wrote about the previous keeper, Alistair, saying he hadn't just disappeared. Silas found a single, gnawed-on finger bone tucked between the floorboards of the living quarters. He became obsessed with the foundation, spending his days tapping on the stone, convinced something was sealed inside. He tried to chip away at the masonry with a hammer and chisel. His last entry read, "It wants out." I can hear it scratching. God forgive me, I think it's hungry. A cold dread, colder than any winter storm, washed over me. I'd heard the hum. For years, I dismissed it as the old structure groaning, the machinery of the lamp. But now, sitting there with that book in my hands, I listened. And I heard it. A low, resonant thrumming that came from below. It was a sound that felt ancient and alive. Over the next few days, my world changed. The familiar, comforting solitude of the lighthouse became a suffocating, menacing prison. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind rattling the windows, sent a jolt of pure terror through me. I started seeing them to the shadows. A fleeting darkness in the corner of my eye, a shape that darted past the open doorway to the kitchen. I'd spin around, my heart hammering against my ribs, only to find nothing there. The whispers started a week later. It wasn't a voice, not really. It was more like the ghost of a sound, a sibilant hiss that slithered through the air, just on the edge of hearing. It would come at night, when the light was sweeping its beam across the churning black water. The whispers seemed to form words I couldn't quite understand, promises of knowledge and power, laced with a terrifying, unspoken price. I stopped sleeping. How could I? My dreams were filled with images of a vast, submerged city of non-Euclidean geometry, of colossal shapes moving in the crushing darkness of the abyss. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, the hum of the lighthouse a deafening roar in my ears. I began to understand what Alistair and Silas had felt. The lighthouse wasn't a beacon. It was a cage. And I was the jailer. My sanity began to fray. I'd find myself talking to the walls, begging whatever was down there to be quiet, to leave me alone. One night, I saw the face in the lantern glass, just as Alistair had described. It wasn't human. It was long, with wide, black eyes that held no reflection, and a mouth that opened impossibly wide, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. It was there for a heartbeat, a perfect, horrifying reflection against the backdrop of the stormy sea, and then it was gone. I screamed until my throat was raw. I knew I had to see what was in the foundation. Driven by a fear that had finally eclipsed reason, I went down to the lowest level, the storeroom where the sea chest had been. The air was thick, heavy, and smelled of brine and something else, something foul and organic. I took a heavy mallet from the tool rack, its weight a small comfort in my trembling hands. I followed the sound, the deep, guttural hum. It was strongest near the north wall, the one that faced the open sea. I placed my hand against the cold, damp stone. The vibration was intense, a living pulse that traveled up my arm. I thought of Silas, hammering away in madness. But I wasn't mad. I was terrified, but I needed to know. I swung the mallet. The sound of the impact was deafening in the confined space. A chip of stone flew off. I swung again, and again, my movements frantic, fueled by adrenaline and a desperate need for answers. A crack appeared. Then another. With a final, desperate heave, a section of the masonry crumbled, revealing a cavity behind it. I shone my flashlight into the darkness. The beam cut through a thick, viscous black ooze that dripped slowly from the edges of the hole. And in the center of the cavity, there was something else. It looked like a heart. A massive, pulsating organ, the size of a small barrel, veined with sickly, phosphorescent blue lines. It beat in time with the hum that filled the lighthouse, a slow, powerful, ancient rhythm. Thump, thump. Thump, thump. As I stared, mesmerized in horror, a long, slender tendril, slick with the black ooze, sneaked out from the darkness around the heart. It moved with an unnatural intelligence, coiling in the air for a moment before lashing out. I stumbled back with a cry as it wrapped around my ankle. The cold was absolute, a chilling void that seemed to drain the life and warmth right out of me. It pulled. I fell, scrambling backward, kicking wildly. The tendril was impossibly strong. It was dragging me, pulling me towards the hole, towards that grotesque, beating heart. The whispers were no longer on the edge of my hearing. They were inside my head, a cacophony of alien thoughts and ravenous hunger, promising me an eternity in the cold, dark deep. With a final surge of desperation, I grabbed the fallen mallet. I swung it wildly at the tendril wrapped around my leg. It struck with a wet, sickening thud. The appendage recoiled instantly, and I scrambled away, crab-walking backward across the floor until my back hit the far wall. The tendril slithered back into the hole, and the broken masonry seemed to shift, grinding back into place as if it were never disturbed. I didn't wait. I fled. Up the winding stairs, past my living quarters, not daring to look back. I didn't stop until I was in the lantern room, the great light sweeping its protective beam over me. I bolted the door, my whole body shaking uncontrollably. That was a week ago. I haven't left this room since. The supply boat is due in 2 days. But I know I can't leave. The logbook. Alistair's last words. The light is not for the ships. It is to keep them away. I understand now. The light, it soothes the thing in the foundation. It keeps it sleeping. Or, at least, it keeps its hunger at bay. If I leave, if the light goes out, it will wake. It will break free. The whispers tell me so. They show me visions of coastal towns being swallowed by colossal tides, of ships dragged down into the depths by things that should not be. So I remain. The keeper. I will keep the lamp polished, the flame burning bright. I write this in the old logbook, my own entry for whoever finds this place after I'm gone. The hum is louder now. The whispers are constant. Sometimes I see the face in the glass. It almost feels like it's smiling. I am no longer a lighthouse keeper. I am a sacrifice, a god at the gate of a forgotten prison, praying the light never, ever goes out. Thank you for listening.